a sitting president gives a ton of speeches in a given year. What sets this one apart? What are you going to be listening for today?
Well, I think today's speech should be very important, certainly to the nation, principally because this is not a campaign speech. This is not a speech about Donald Trump. This is a speech to the nation, showing the gratitude of this nation to those who have served and those who have given the greatest sacrifice that they could, and their families. So this is actually a reflection, no matter what is said today, is a reflection of how we as a nation feel towards those who again have sacrificed.
Malcolm, how do you mark this day? You talk about families acknowledging the sacrifice of family members. You look back through history. You can't find a war the U.S. has been involved in which there wasn't a Nance fighting on behalf of the U.S. You have a long history of service. How do you mark Memorial Day?
Well, usually I mark Memorial Day by doing an honorary workout for Navy Commander Mike Murphy. There's a workout called the Workout of the Day, called the Murph, and it's a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 sit-ups, 300 crunches and squats, and then another mile run wearing body armor. But that's for the Mike Murphy Foundation, a Medal of Honor winner, and the nation should celebrate it as they see fit, because these are the sacrifices people made to give you these freedoms. So we enjoy, veterans enjoy the cookout and, enjoy the beer, because otherwise, without those sacrifices, the situation may be different.
Malcolm Nance, I want to ask you about someone in particular I know that you think about on this day. That's Lieutenant Commander Eric Christensen, who died. He was killed in Afghanistan in 2005. Tell us a bit about him.
Yeah, Commander Christensen, I worked for him when I was a contractor at Naval Special Warfare Command over at Naval Special Warfare Unit 1. He was a great guy, and, we were training SEALs in how to do prisoner handling of al-Qaeda prisoners, and, he was always in the foreign language office, and he and my good friend Mark Overton were good friends, and, I came to know him there, and when he died in 2005 in Operation Red Wings, it was devastating.
Malcolm, what does this ritual mean to you? Yes, the speech is different year after year, but the ritual surrounding it is the same. And how do you react to seeing it? How do you react to hearing that 21-gun salute and to see what's about to happen here at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers?
Well, I'll tell you, it's very different if you're actually physically there, and it's overwhelming. You feel the shot from the cannon from the old guard, and you hear the salutes, and you see the solemnity of the ceremony, and you really, truly understand the depth of loss of the families who come there. There are a lot of families who are Gold Star parents who come to these ceremonies, and you really feel the gratefulness that a nation can offer.
Malcolm Nance, I mentioned your service in the Navy, and I wonder if you can remember back early in your career what you were taught or told about reverence for those who had made the ultimate sacrifice. What did you learn about that early on?
Well, I come from a very old Navy family. As a matter of fact, my longest serving family member started in the Civil War, both in the Army and the Navy, quite surprisingly. We took service to the military very, very, very seriously. Literally every male has served in the armed forces in my family since 1864, and even our slave owners' family to the American Revolution. So we took and understood that. My father was a World War II veteran, as was his grandfather, who was World War I and World War II, and they lost people. They knew people who were lost. So Memorial Day was not a day just to kid around. It was a day in which to celebrate this nation and to hold dear the values that all of us, that they fought for and that we would fight for when we served.
Was it ever a question, Malcolm, that you were going to serve yourself? What were those conversations like with your relatives when you were considering what to do with your life, when you made that decision to enter the Navy?
No, there was never a thought that I wasn't going to serve. My father had served. I had, at that time, 5 brothers had served in the Navy. I knew I was going into the Navy. It was just a question of when and what career field. And, I was a Sea Cadet leading up to that. And then I went in the Navy. My younger brother went into the Navy. And I now have a niece who was in the Navy who served in combat off of Yemen last year. So, but that's just us. That's our family, and what we consider the most important thing is the fact that we serve because we love this country. We have great patriotism, and we want you to enjoy those freedoms that you have no matter what they are.
Malcolm, do you remember first visiting the cemetery, your reaction to being in that place?
Yeah, yes, I do. And as a matter of fact, I was a veteran in Beirut in 1983. And a few years later, I was having some stress issues related to that. And while I was there, I met the family of a Marine who was killed in the Marine barracks bombing, Major McCragaloo, and his young son, who now I'm sure is in his 40s. And it was just overwhelming, but also it gave me a sense of peace being there amongst our shipmates, amongst our peers, and knowing that the nation would take care of them and would take care of their families.
I mentioned that moment back in 1998 when the remains from Vietnam of First Lieutenant Michael Joseph Blassie were identified. Take us back to that recent history, Malcolm, as well. What do you remember of the significance of that moment, of that identification, and how that changed this place?
Well, it certainly changed Arlington forever because, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier was, prior to that, individuals would be found on the battlefield and then would be honored. I grew up in Philadelphia. In fact, the first Tomb of the Unknown Soldier was in Washington Park, just behind Independence Hall. And there are still thousands of unidentified members of, the Revolutionary War there. So DNA has radically changed that. Now we may never, ever again have an unknown soldier. But it also marks a change for, the nation in that that's a good thing. And now that we can go forward with families knowing full well the honor that their members have served with and the sacrifice that they've given.
Malcolm, let me turn to you and just get your reaction to what we saw there. The playing of taps, the 30-second moment of silence, those four muffled ruffles that began it all.
Well, what you saw is a ceremony where the President of the United States, for a grateful nation, laying a wreath at those lost soldiers who represent all of us who have served in the armed forces. And I think it's a wonderfully solemn occasion with the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And now it'll progress on to his speech, which he'll enunciate that gratitude.